Hey, welcome back, subscribers, to my world of stocks. In today's video, we're talking all about Pfizer stock. And if you need to jump around, I will have chapters for you down below. But I basically just wanted to give you guys a quick update here for two main reasons. Number one is that the stock continues to trade dirt cheap at one of the lowest prices in more than 10 years, which is crazy to think about for what is still, literally the biggest pharmaceutical company in the entire world. But number two is that they just made yet another gigantic acquisition in what has really been one of the absolute largest buying sprees of other companies that I think I've ever seen in my entire life. And so I just feel that this is a company here that is really gearing up for a major wave of growth over the next decade that Wall Street seems to be, either unaware of or just kind of flat out ignoring because of really how much the company has been struggling lately coming off the giant pandemic years. And look, I get that this is a very controversial company these days, and I'm not here to discuss the kind of political or social stuff surrounding them or their business. I'm really just sharing my opinion on this stock from an investment perspective alone. And I, of course, welcome all views and opinions here. So, whether you love or hate the company, whether you're buying the stock or even shorting it, none of that matters to me. It does not offend me in any way. I honestly hope that you have success with whatever you're doing out there in the market. But we got to talk about Pfizer stock because it is, one of the holdings in my portfolio. And I feel it's my responsibility to give you guys updates on stocks that I do own. So that's why we're going to talk about Pfizer today. With all that said, let's just go ahead and jump straight into this. And we'll start first with the news, the big update here, the headline that we just received today. I'm actually recording this on Monday, but it'll probably be posted Tuesday morning because it takes me a while to, get everything together, record and edit the video. But yeah, by the time you're seeing this, you will have maybe heard of yet another major acquisition here. This time it was in the purchase of Metsera for a whopping $7.3 billion in cash. Now, for those of you who don't know, Pfizer has actually been trying to break into the red hot weight loss market for years, given how insanely large it's becoming, with analysts projecting it now to grow to $150 billion annually over the next decade. So it's going to be generating, unbelievable amounts of money every single year. And of course, weight loss is going to be, a primary growth driver in healthcare with, obesity rates as high as they are. And so many people, unfortunately struggling with weight loss. And by the way, I'm not like an advocate of just using medication for that. Obviously, I believe in eating healthy and exercise and all that kind of stuff. I think that should be the primary thing that you turn to. But of course, it's just the reality of the world we live in. There are going to be treatments for this. Now, the problem, however, for Pfizer specifically, is not only that, competition is heating up a lot in this market with, already household names like Ozempic and Wegovy from Novo Nordisk and, Zepbound from Eli Lilly. And, there's other companies too out there. But on top of that, Pfizer themselves have actually seen major setbacks trying to enter this market. They're kind of struggling with it, with just earlier this year having to scrap their own oral GLP-1 candidate due to safety concerns. Now, this was really a major disappointment for the company, and it ultimately left them kind of scrambling behind rivals in what is quickly becoming one of the most competitive and lucrative spaces or landscapes in all of pharma. And it's something that investors have really been pushing Pfizer, like you really need to get out there and get something going here. And Pfizer, by the way, does have other treatments in lower stages of their pipeline, but investors just really want them to catch up to the competition who's already just so far, like starting to get pretty far ahead of them. Well, you fast forward to today, and it's exactly the reason why Pfizer just went out and try to buy their way into the market. They spent billions of dollars to acquire Metsera, a biotech with a growing pipeline that includes multiple early and mid-stage weight loss drug candidates, both oral and injectable, that analysts are saying, could generate billions in the future if they are successful. But really, the main reason why I think investors need to take notice of this move here is because it's on top of what has been, like I said before, one of the largest acquisition sprees of all time. In fact, when you combine the 7.3 billion that they're spending on Metsera with the 12 billion that they spent on Biohaven, the 43 billion they spent on CGen, and the several other deals worth billions of dollars too, it altogether equates to about $77 billion in recent acquisitions just from the pandemic up to today alone. So just during that time frame, that's how much money they've been spending. And speaking of the pandemic, oh, by the way, that 77 billion that they're spending on acquisitions, it was still less than the $100 billion of extra revenue that they generated during the pandemic years, where the government basically subsidized all the costs, allowing Pfizer to walk away with insane profits that they are now using to buy up a ton of the competition. And it's just allowing a lot of flexibility for them where, again, like they were struggling to enter this weight loss market. Well, now they can just kind of buy their way into it because of their size and dominance, which is, by the way, one of the reasons why I usually invest in leading, market share leading companies, giants. I like to build that as kind of the foundation of my portfolio in some of the biggest companies out there. I have big investments, like in Microsoft and Amazon, Nvidia, stuff like that, because those companies are just so large and so dominant that it allows them to make moves like this. It allows them to even be able to enter new markets in the future because of, again, just the profitability they have, the size, the strength, the leadership, the connections they have. It just allows them to make moves like this. One of the reasons why I also own PepsiCo, big giant there, that literally just kind of goes around buying up all the little players whenever something pops up, like they did with like Bubbly, SodaStream. Whenever there's like a small company out there entering the space, they can just kind of acquire them, and then it gives them exposure that they were looking for too. Anyway, getting off track here, but the result of all this is that Pfizer will basically now be coming out of this downturn here post-pandemic with one of the biggest and most diversified pipelines in the entire industry. And yet, despite all of these moves, the stock completely collapsed after the pandemic, where it now trades even lower today than it did an entire decade ago, leaving their PE ratios more than 50% lower than the sector median, despite this still being the clear market leader. I mean, I don't know if anyone ever guessed that Pfizer would be trading this low, especially during the pandemic. I don't think anybody was predicting such a major fall off. But to kind of put some of this into perspective, other giants like Novo Nordisk and Eli Lilly, in terms of like PE ratios, they trade anywhere from like 2 to 5 times higher than Pfizer right now. And yet it's actually Pfizer who's the one that is paying out the largest dividend of all at currently more than 7%, which is among the highest levels that we've ever seen from them. In fact, I believe the only other time that it was higher, like a time period that it was higher, was during the Great Recession. And even then, it was very short-lived because they ended up having to cut it shortly after. I think they cut it like in half. Now, you could, of course, argue that a similar situation is brewing here. Maybe it's possible to happen here too, where they are having this steep fall off in their financials post-pandemic, and demand for the V-shot has obviously dwindled down to almost nothing. I mean, I personally, I don't know about you guys, but I don't personally hear of anyone still taking the V-shot for the pepperoni. I have to use code words because YouTube demonetization, stuff like that. But yeah, that demand has really dwindled down. And so the financials have fallen off a cliff too, at least from those highs. But two things on that. So number one, next year, so the problem is that people are comparing financials now to at the height of the pandemic, but you can't really make that comparison because that was a special kind of one-off event. However, next year, actually, I'm sorry, not next year, this year in 2025, their sales and EPS will actually still be higher than they were pre-pandemic. And yet the stock price is actually lower and cheaper today with an even bigger dividend. Doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. But more importantly, number two is, again, all of those massive acquisitions that should really usher in a new wave of growth for the company, which, by the way, is usually the cycles that pharma giants typically go through, where they lose patent protections, or in this case have a big fall off in demand for a certain treatment, causing their financials and the stock price to crash along with it. But then later they experience a recovery once new drugs and treatments start rolling off the pipeline, which again, Pfizer is spending an insane amount of money to ensure that that happens for them. And look, I'm not saying that I have 100% confidence that this will absolutely be the case, but I'm just saying that history tells me that it's very likely to be a similar scenario here. And that's why, again, from just an investment perspective alone, I'm not talking about all the other, whatever personal opinions, we hold about this company and other stuff like that. Just from an investment perspective alone, for me, I feel that it's worth taking this bet at these levels. But hey, again, that's just me. Of course, you guys got to do your own research, do your own due diligence, make your own decisions. Don't get mad at me if this stock just continues to crash. Those things are always a possibility. I'm just sharing with you my opinion and what I'm doing myself. So, if I get this wrong, yeah, it hurts me, but you got to make your own decisions. With that said, I'd love to hear from you and hear what your opinion is. Do you like this stock right here? Are you buying maybe any other pharma stocks out there? I feel like there's a lot of cheap ones out there. I've looked at like Merck and Bristol Myers. There's several out there that look very cheap to me with big dividends. So let me know, is there any other ones that you like maybe more than Pfizer? Or are you just kind of staying away from the entire landscape? Does it all seem too risky to you right now? And especially, with the economy and with tariffs and everything else going on, are you too worried about stocks right now? I don't know. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Like I said, I welcome all views, all opinions. I love you guys regardless. Even if we have difference of opinions, that never stops me from, caring about you guys and wishing all of you the absolute best. And I even pray for that too. So anyway, thank you, my friends, for stopping by. I hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you're all doing well out there. Now we'll catch you in the next one. All right. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.